You are watching Sky News Today with me, Saima Mohsin. Coming up, could Donald Trump pull funding for Ukraine when he enters the White House? I'll ask the global affairs analyst Michael Bociurkiw after the break. Welcome back. The EU foreign policy chief has reassured Ukraine that it can count on Europe's support following President-elect Trump's victory. There are doubts over what Kyiv can expect from the re-elected US president after he repeatedly made vows to end the war and criticise America's aid to the region during his campaign. It all comes as Vladimir Putin expressed an interest in talks with Trump following the election result. Well, I'm joined now by Michael Bociurkiw, a global affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Centre. Good evening to you. Let's talk about the situation where you are right now first, Michael. Describe what's going on the ground in Ukraine.
Good to be with you. Well, it's really, really terrible. In Odesa, where I've been living for the past 2 years, was hit very, very violently overnight. In one night, it received as many drones as usually the entire country receives in a 24-hour period. So far, 1 dead, 13 injured, and massive, massive destruction. And I should add that it's mostly to civilian residential complexes. So let's remind everybody as well that Odesa is not only a big city, but it's also a key international port that feeds the world. And any hopes that things would calm down after the announcement of the Trump victory has gone entirely out the door. In fact, it's got a lot worse, not only Odesa, but also here in Kyiv and elsewhere in Ukraine.
Yeah, and I guess that is the window right now that everyone's focused on, what's happening right now post-US election. What is Vladimir Putin planning? But then there's also the months to come and the concern of what President Trump might decide to do.
Yeah, and you know, I was just out earlier today talking to people, and people were out on the streets because everything's interrupted because of air raid siren alerts, so they can't go to the theater, the parks, and so on. So what they're telling me is the biggest fear, of course, is that aid will be cut off and that Mr. Zelensky, the president, will be forced to the negotiating table. But with that possibility, one would think a sober move of the current lame duck U.S. administration would be to not only fast-track everything that's been pledged, but also quietly, if they have to, give London and Paris the okay to give those Western missiles to Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia, where these drones and missiles are coming from. And, you know, you mentioned the EU Foreign Affairs chief is here, and I talk to a lot of Ukrainians day in and day out, and they're actually becoming sick and tired of leaders coming here talking with empty pledges, because at the end of the day, nothing stops Russian missiles more than air defense systems. Words just don't do that.
And President Zelensky is continuing to push, as you say. European leaders are pledging their support. There is concern that President Trump might pull out. Do you think there might be something from Joe Biden before he leaves the presidency?
Well, that's the hope. And, you know, I would assume that in their meeting coming up in the Oval Office, they will talk a lot about Ukraine. But Biden has shown weakness. That's the general feeling here in Ukraine. He's put Ukraine on a drip feed approach to aid, not giving everything at the beginning as he probably should have. But I should also add that, you know, if we are going to look for any clouds of hope here, I think there are some smart people around who may become part of the Trump administration. I'm thinking of people like Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, Kurt Volker, the former U.S. ambassador to Brussels, and also Richard Grenell, the former U.S. ambassador to Germany. And then on the side, not only now, but leading into a Trump administration, you're going to see, I think, a growing role of newcomers like Saudi Arabia. They're expected to have a peace summit soon with Russia, Ukraine, and China at the table. So that could change the dynamic and hopefully in favor of Ukraine.
And of course, people have often said that ultimately this will have to end in some kind of negotiation. But the truth is as well, negotiation only happens when there is some kind of military might at play as well, and there are some kind of military gains. So President Putin, I know you often say, only understands strength.
He does. And I think even more so that has to be shown that now you're having a solidifying of this axis of autocrats between the leaders in Moscow and Tehran, in Pyongyang and in Beijing. And if that show of strength is absent, imagine what we might see, for example, from China leading into the next few weeks or months in regards to Taiwan. So maximum strength needs to be applied not only militarily, but also sanction-wise. And, you know, bringing this war, if need be, to the doorsteps of ordinary Russians so that they feel the pain the Ukrainians are, and hence that could put more pressure on Mr. Putin. But again, hopes here are very low right now. All everyone wants is for this war to end, for the bloodshed to stop. I was just 2 blocks away from here where you have an entire park covered with flags that represent every single Ukrainian death and foreign fighter death. I can tell you it's as far as the eye can see. It is so heartbreaking.
Yeah, I can imagine being there to witness it yourself, Michael. While I have you, if we look farther afield at the Trump presidency and what to expect, of course, we've been speaking about Paris and COP29 coming up. There's concern about Ukraine, the Middle East. I mean, he said he can end all these conflicts and wars around the world. What's your analysis of what to expect from a Trump presidency, Michael?
Well, it's easy to be cynical when it comes to Mr. Trump. I mean, look at how many businesses of his have failed, and how is he expected to solve these big world problems? But I think that, you know, Trump is very unpredictable, unhinged. But having said that, he will want to show results very quickly, whether it comes to the war in Ukraine, what's happening in the Taiwan Straits or the South China Sea, or the Middle East. You're probably going to see a lot of his kids in the office, children in the office, and deputies shuttling diplomacy to the Middle East to try and stop the war there. I don't suspect that'll be something settled in favor of the Palestinians. So a lot happening right now that they have to deal with, but let's hope that they're pressed by the desire for fast results.
Michael Bociurkiw, thanks very much indeed for your analysis.
My pleasure.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. I've witnessed migration across Europe close up.
I'm James Matthews and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Free, wherever you get your news.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Seagal?
I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent. Sky News, the full story first.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.